So like I said earlier, my name is Colton Anderson. I am one of our admissions advisors here at EWU. I work with students in Eastern Washington outside of Spokane County and in the state of Idaho. So if you're out in that area, you've definitely heard from me before. So appreciate everybody coming out here. We're going to be going through our financial aid webinar today. So bunch of really cool stuff going to be going on, giving you all the info financial aid wise that you're going to be needing as far as the next steps into that. We also have our director of financial aid here, Candy Teeters, going to be going through a cool presentation for everybody, give you all kinds of information like I'm talking about, give you the lowdown on what you should expect for those next steps. I know that we've got a little bit of a mix of students, whether or not you're confirmed to come to Eastern or just an admitted student, but we're going to be covering info for all of you. So, and incoming freshmen and some transfers as well. So, like I said, we're going to have info for everybody. Make sure everybody has an opportunity to get their questions answered. After that presentation, we're going to be doing that Q&A. We're going to have a cool Q&A session where you can actually ask Candy some specific questions. Now, I'd love for you guys to, please wait until after the presentation to get those questions out there. I know that a lot of us probably have a couple that we're holding on to specifically, but more than likely we're going to get a bunch of them answered during the Q&A. And then if we don't, pretty likely you're going to have some other questions that are similar to the other students that are here. So just ask that we wait till the end of that, and then we'll go ahead and get going with that. So also, we are also going to be sending out some links through the webinar chat feature. So if you want to scroll around and open up that chat, like I said, you'll be able to. We're going to be throwing some stuff out for you, so that you can maybe follow along as to what the things that we're talking about. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Candy and let her go ahead and get started. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Colton. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Glad to have you with us here today. Hopefully, many of you saw me and participated during Admitted Student Day. We had a financial aid information session then as well. And this is sort of picking up where we left off. So hopefully those of you that are joining us have already received your financial aid offer for the upcoming school year. And this is just to take you through those next steps. What happens now? You have your financial aid award. Life is great, but what do you do from here? So today we're going to talk about the next steps with your financial aid award. We will also talk about billing and payments. So not something you need to worry about today, but how things work when classes start in the fall and what to expect. And also if working while you're in school is important to you, we'll go through some information related to campus employment. So first of all, just a little bit of background on who's who. You're going to hear lots of things as you're starting your studies. There's various departments across campus, and sometimes it's hard to know where to go to get the information that you need. The great thing about Eastern is that even if you contact the wrong office, sometimes we might even have the answer for you without you having to proceed further. And if we don't, we know who you need to talk to get the help that you need. So don't be afraid to contact the wrong office. We'll steer you on the right path. But here's some basic information on the areas that you might be working with over the next couple of months. Financial aid, that's our office. We're really the place that you start when you're looking for ways to help pay for your educational expenses. That's our goal. That's our duty, is to find you assistance so that you can make your higher education dreams come true. The other area, super similar name, so we're often frequently confused as Student Financial Services. They're responsible for billing. I always joke and say, we're the good guys. We give you money. They're the bad guys. They take away money, but that's all in jest. They're good guys too. We really like their office and work frequently with them. But they are the office that will post bills on your student account. In higher education, there are tuition costs. You do have to pay for the cost of your education, and they're the ones that assess those charges. They also collect the payment when you're making payments to the school. And if you have financial aid that's more than what your charges are to the school, they're the entity that provides that funding to you as well. So I guess that makes them super good guys too. The last area to be familiar with is student employment. They're the office on campus that can, if you want a job while you're in school, they will help you find a job. Some of you might have seen information about work study as part of your financial aid offer, that possibly being an option for you. That is just one tiny portion of student employment options that are available on campus. Only about 25% of our campus jobs, which it's over 2,000 jobs, so there are a lot, are through work study, which is a very limited population. The vast majority are just jobs where you're employed by different departments across campus. So there are options for you if you're interested in working while you're a student. So just a short step backwards. If you haven't completed your financial aid application yet for classes that start in September, it's not too late, but you want to do that as soon as you possibly can. I know with the unusual environment that we're in right now, sometimes family situations have changed and maybe you didn't think you needed the help that you could get through the financial aid application known as the FAFSA, but life is different now. And that might be a resource that you need to look into. So that information is still available. You can still complete that process. You go to fafsa.gov and it will provide the login information there. If you are a DACA or 1079 student, it's a slightly different process. You complete an application called the WAFSFA, and that application is available at readysetgrad.org. Additionally, if you have done your financial aid application but haven't heard anything more from us, it's probably because we're waiting to hear from you. Sometimes students have to provide additional information so we can determine what types of financial aid we're able to offer to you. We communicate solely by email, your student email, your Eagles email. And if that's not a resource that you've been regularly checking, there may be some messages there waiting for you that you need to act on. So be sure if you, a couple of things, be sure that you're responding to our requests for additional information. Or if you haven't heard from us, you've checked your Eagles email and can't find anything from us, give us a call. Give us an email. Let's check into it and see what's going on. If you've done your financial aid application, as long as it wasn't in the last week or two, we should have been communicating with you by this point. And if you don't believe that we have, there could be a problem that we want to work through and resolve for you. So as I started the presentation, I mentioned that hopefully all of you, most of you, have received your financial aid offer. Just a reminder that there are some next steps, that receiving the offer alone, that's not the end of the story. There's a little bit more that needs to happen to ensure that we have those funds available for you when classes start in September. An important reference is our Accept Aid, ew.edu Accept Aid link noted at the bottom of this page. That's really your step-by-step on what to do in accepting your financial aid, and provides links to a lot more detailed information if you still have questions. You're not sure what your offer is, you're not sure what that information means. When you actually go in to accept your financial aid award, it's going to take you into a system that looks like this. This is called EagleNet. This is a system that you will use frequently as a student at Eastern once you commence your enrollment. A few cautions with the checklist when you're accepting your financial aid is to ensure that you actually go through it step by step. If you're like me, my tendency is I want to jump right ahead and accept that money, and the system won't function properly if you try and skip some of the steps. So be sure that you follow step by step, and it will take you through the order of accepting that information. A few clarifications if you're still a little bit confused about the offer that's been presented to you. Any grant money, that's free money. That's money that you don't have to repay. So we know you want that money, and if you don't think you want it, you should want it. Not everyone will qualify for free aid, will qualify for grants, but those that do, we know that's money that you want, and we accept it proactively on your behalf. So there isn't any acceptance that you need to complete in this process for those grant funds. What you will need to decide on are student loans that will be offered to you in most cases as well. I know a common question that we get this time of year is maybe you don't know if you need a student loan yet or not. That's okay. You don't have to decide today. Or say you decide today that you don't want the money. You think that you've worked your budget and you think that you can cover your educational expenses without a student loan, which is great. You can decline it now, but you can always change your mind as we get closer to the start of fall quarter, or even at any point throughout the school year. If you decline your loan and change your mind, you just need to contact us and we can reactivate that assistance for you. So it's not a firm final decision. You can always change your mind. The other important piece that sometimes gets missed is that you need to electronically accept your terms and conditions. Those are just all the rules surrounding financial aid, which basically means that the funding we're providing to you is to cover educational costs. And if you don't end up going to school, you don't complete the term, or maybe you don't do well in the classes that you're registered for, there can be some consequences for not meeting those terms and conditions. So it is there, when you go to the Accept Aid link, it will take you through the list of terms and conditions that you need to be aware of, and just make sure that you read through that information and you understand what your obligation is when it comes to being a financial aid recipient. Once you complete acceptance of your financial aid offer, if you choose to borrow a student loan, or you want to activate a student loan where a loan where your parent is borrowing a loan on your behalf, it's going to activate some additional unsatisfied requirements. That means there are a few more steps for you to complete before you'll actually receive those funds. Work study works the same way. If you are potentially a candidate for work study, you will see that notification in your unsatisfied requirements. There's a one-page short application form, basically just to say that you're interested in work study. If it's available, make sure you complete that and get that back to us by the deadline so we can consider you for that possibility. We have far more interested students in work study than we have funds available. So it's actually awarded on a lottery system, but those that are considered for that lottery are the applications that are returned, that one-page form I talked about saying that yes, you're interested. Again, don't be intimidated by that. If you don't get work study or you're not eligible for work study, we have plenty of other campus job options for you. A last caution that can be confusing. So your financial aid offer could have been anywhere from roughly $15,000 to up to about $24,000. Keep in mind that's the award that's available to you for the entire school year, not just for one term. So Eastern primarily runs on a quarter system, which means that we start new classes roughly every 3 months. We have classes that start in September, classes that start in January, and classes that start either late March or the first week of April. So that lump sum financial aid offer that's been presented to you, that's going to be divided up into thirds, and we're going to give you 1/3 of that total amount at the start of each term. Your costs work in the same fashion. Your costs are due 1/3 of the year's total at the start of each term. So you only pay for fall quarter, and then you pay for winter quarter, and then you pay for spring quarter. So the two work in tandem, but that can be a confusing point that students don't understand. They don't get that full large chunk right on the front end of the school year. I mentioned student loans. If you choose to borrow a student loan or your parents choose to borrow a loan on your behalf called a Parent Plus loan, there are 2 additional steps that must be complete before those loan funds will actually come to the institution. On your financial aid offer that we were looking at just a moment ago, you do choose that you want to borrow, but you have to do these secondary steps before that money will show up at the school. This is probably the biggest component that is missed, and sometimes students don't realize it until they show up here for classes, well, I guess either virtual or in person, to receive their assistance to start fall quarter. So to make sure you don't cause yourself unnecessary stress when classes are starting in the fall, if you plan to borrow a student loan, you do need to complete these 2 additional steps. You'll complete that process by going to studentaid.gov. It's going to bring you to a screen that looks like this. If you click on the Complete Aid option across the top of your screen, it's going to bring you to the 2 components that you have to complete: a master promissory note, which is just your legal agreement accepting the terms of borrowing a student loan, and you also have to complete loan entrance counseling. It's basically just a tutorial that explains what it is, what it means to borrow a student loan, and what your obligation is. If your parent chooses to borrow a student loan on your behalf, they will also complete a master promissory note and can find it in the same section. I mentioned it early on, but be sure that as part of accepting your financial aid offer, you should be calculating what your costs are to go to school and compare that to what types of financial aid is available to you. You need to come up with your budget to make sure that you're financially prepared to start your classes. A few things to be aware of when it comes to your costs here at Eastern. Your tuition charges are fixed. You're going to have those for sure, and you're going to have book expenses for sure. The points that can vary is your housing and meal choices. If you choose to live on campus, off campus, or with your parents, this variable can change depending on your personal situation, and also all of the other costs. So we provide an allowance for these. It's not a bill, it's not a charge that you're going to get from the institution. The only charges you'll ever get from the institution are tuition and fees, and if you choose to live on campus. Newer, the last couple of years, sometimes you might see a digital book charge on your account as well, but by and large, these expenses are just based on the choices that you're making and the individual contracts that you have. They're not bills that you receive from Eastern. But now is the time to start thinking about, now is the time to start thinking about this big picture. How much money do I have available? How much am I going to earn through the summer? That can be a factor as well, versus how much are my fall costs and where am I at? Some important considerations, once you receive your financial aid award offer and accept those funds, what happens with that money? And we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail in just a moment when we look through the billing information. But a quick summary is if your fall financial aid offer is larger than your charges being billed by Eastern. So remember, we just talked about that. That's your tuition and that's your on-campus room and board if you're living here on campus. If the amount of financial aid you have available is more than what those charges are, you're going to qualify for what's called a refund. That just means leftover money is going to come to you. It will come one of 2 ways. You can either set up direct deposit, where those funds just show up in your bank account like magic, or a check is printed and put out to your mailing address. We strongly encourage you to choose direct deposit. It's faster for sure, but it's also more secure, protecting your money so it doesn't get lost in the mail somewhere. The purpose of those funds is to help you for those things that you don't see on your student bill. It's to help you buy books. It's to help pay for rent if you're living on campus, and anything else that you might need that's related to your education. That's the intent of those funds. Again, just another reminder that when you get money on September, what's the first day of class? So September 23rd, that money is for 3 months. It's not money for you to use right away. So be cautious that you're spreading that money out over the duration of the term so that you don't find yourself in financial challenges towards the end of the quarter. The other important variable to be aware of is, what if your financial aid offer is less than what your charges are going to be to Eastern? So that's part of the budgeting, and now is the time to start thinking through those processes. Do you have money coming from other sources? Are you working this summer? Are you working now and saving some of those funds? Is family planning to help you with some of those extra costs? Campus employment, I've mentioned that a couple of times. That is a great opportunity to help you pay for some of those lower level educational costs. And student loans are always an option for you as well. I always tell families, if the only way that you can make your education dreams come true is to borrow a student loan with a 3 to 5% interest rate, that's a really good investment in your future by choosing to borrow a student loan. You just need to be smart about it. Don't take more than you need, only take what you are required to cover those expenses, and manage those funds wisely. The last thing Eastern does offer that makes paying for your education a lot more affordable is we do have quarterly payment plans. There is a small $40 nominal fee to sign up for that quarterly payment plan, but what it will allow you to do is take any charges that your financial aid isn't able to cover and spread those out over the term. So for example, maybe after your financial aid pays, you still have $1,500 that you need to cover out of pocket or through some other means. You can take that $1,500 and spread it out, paying $500 in September, $500 in October, and $500 in November. A lot of families find that spreading the debt over multiple terms makes it a lot more affordable. It's easier to pay $500 than $1,500 on the front end. Next, we're going to talk through the billing process a little bit, because that may be where the step that you're at. Financial aid is all resolved, it's all set up, ready to go. You've taken all of those necessary steps. Now you want to know, when do things happen? When am I going to start to see stuff? So most of the processes start in July. That's when our billing office will post charges for fall tuition. So you'll be able to see what your exact tuition expense is, usually by the end of July. Housing is typically, if you're choosing to live on campus, that's the next bill that you'll see post on your account, usually by the end of August. So by the end of the summer, you should have a clear billing picture for your Eastern related charges. We have estimates out there. You can get a feel for that information now. You don't have to wait until the end of the summer. But if you want that exact number with course fees or any other possible expense that might come up related to Eastern charges, it will be late summer before you have that specific number. What happens next is the week before classes start, and these dates are relative to fall, but in general, the same information applies each term of the school year. About 1 week before classes start, so for fall term, that's September 16th, any financial aid that you have available will pay towards your fall Eastern charges. Starting on the 17th, Student Financial Services, our billing office, will send an email notification to any students that have a bill still remaining for fall term. So again, remember that Eagle's email is super important. Financial aid is communicating to that address, and Student Financial Services is communicating to that address as well. So if you're planning to pay some of your expenses out of pocket, September 17th will be the first day that you will have an accurate picture after your financial aid has paid as much as it can towards your Eastern charges. Classes start 1 week later on Wednesday, September 23rd. And I mentioned earlier, if you have more financial aid than you have charges due to Eastern, you'll get what's called a refund. Those refunds are released to students starting the first day of classes. So while we're going to take that money and pay your bills about a week before, any leftover money isn't going to come to you until the earliest is the first day of classes. Again, advantage to having direct deposit. If you have direct deposit, those funds are just magically going to show up in your bank account hopefully on the first day of classes, versus if you don't have direct deposit set up, a physical check will go out in the mail on the first day of classes for you. So you're looking at a few additional business days for mail to be processed and get to your home. Any charges that you owe to the school, so those tuition and fees that we talked about, and if you're living on campus, those are going to be due to be paid in full by 5 p.m. on the 6th class day. So weekends don't count, it's just business days. So for fall term, that's September 30th. Your charges need to be paid in full, or you need to have a payment arrangement set up in order to avoid what happens the next business day. Any unpaid balances will be charged a one-time $75 late fee. So be sure you're aware of the payment deadlines, and you've either paid that balance in full or set up a payment plan by that due date so you don't face this unfortunate late fee. Sometimes it's confusing to know how to pay your bill, but we try and make it super easy. Again, more information is available on our Student Financial Services website, ew.edu/SFS. The easiest way to do it is to pay online. And the best way to pay online is through an electronic check. You will enter in your banking information, the routing number, and your account number, and there's no extra fees associated with paying through an electronic check. If you opt to use your debit card or your credit card, there is a convenience fee that you'll experience with most places where you pay online. There is a convenience fee of 2.85% if you choose to use a debit or credit card. We also do have tools that you could access through the Student Financial Services website where students can authorize their parents to view and pay on their student account. This information is secure solely to the student unless they provide this authorization. So make sure if your parents, or you're hoping your parents, are going to be paying some on your behalf, that you've set them up as an authorized user. Another means of payment is by mail, but please remember this is check only. No cash should be sent to the institution through mail. It's not secure, it's not safe, and you don't want to have that money floating out there. So check only, and make sure your student information is on that check so our billing office knows what account to apply those funds to. And last but certainly not least, I can't emphasize it enough, we do offer a payment plan to spread those charges out over 3 months rather than it all being due on the front end of the term. Let's talk a little bit about student employment if you are interested in working while you're in school. I mentioned earlier, Eastern offers over 2,000 campus jobs. Let me backtrack just a little bit. All of this information is based on normal business practices. I'm not quite sure what that might look like for fall term, if it's different at all, given the unique environment that we're in. The good thing to know is that Handshake and our Student Employment Office information is listed here. That's where you'll be able to find the latest and greatest information as we progress through the summer. So this is business as usual information. There may be some slight changes depending on how fall looks. We do have jobs on our campus and off our campus. They are part-time. And the nice thing about if you're working on campus, it's very flexible to your educational needs. So for example, in our office, we have several student employees, and when they have big projects due or exams or something critical that they need to dedicate their time to their studies versus work, we work with those students to give them that extra time as they need it. The most you will ever work is 19 hours per week, but with Washington State minimum wage at the level it is, most of our students are working about 10 to 12 hours per week. So it's definitely manageable with your studies to have campus employment as well. Those opportunities often turn into options to work during breaks and summer. So it potentially could be a job to help you all school year long. I also talked earlier about there's work study options, but if you don't qualify and receive work study, there are plenty of other institutional jobs as well. Handshake is the tool that provides the listing of all the jobs that are available and the ways to apply for those jobs. It's all done electronically online. It even provides more services. For example, if you need help building a resume, you can find that through the Student Employment and Handshake tool. So Student Employment is a link to make sure you're writing down, and visit that website to see the information on Handshake. Jobs for the fall term will start to post as early as August, with the vast majority of them coming in September, usually mid-September, shortly before classes start. So that's one place to be aware of and information to be watchful of. A few important plugs around student employment. It's more than just a paycheck. Now, don't get me wrong, it's great to get a paycheck and everyone needs that to help with the expenses that you will have. But there's lots of other benefits that you're going to get by being a student employee as well. For some students, they can find employment in their professional area of interest, and that's great to make connections, but it's also useful to test out those career choices. Is that really the path that I want to be on? It's a great way to manage your time. If you know that you have time dedicated to work, it better helps you to balance your study time. I mentioned it already. It will help me make connections across campus, and in particular, it will help you form good contacts who can later provide you letters of recommendation for future jobs or for scholarships, which might be an opportunity for you to pursue in future years as well. And most importantly, it's developing lifetime skills that are going to benefit you throughout your time at Eastern and on into your professional life. A couple of quick fun facts about students that work while they go to school. Students who work part-time while they're in school have higher GPAs. These are statistical truths, and they're more likely to complete their college degree. I think much of that, this is just opinion here, but I think much of that has to do with the time management and those connections that you're making. So you're building a pretty strong support system to help you when you do have needs that will point you in the right direction, point you in the right direction, and just establishing those time management skills that you have to dedicate time for each piece of your education and your work so that you're successful. And it forces, having to balance multiple things can force you into those time management strategies. So lastly, just a few important tips and tidbits to be aware of. I've emphasized it a few times during our conversation, but your Eagles email is super important and you should be checking that frequently starting now if you haven't already, and it's a resource that you need to continue all throughout the summer and into the school year. The financial aid offer that's been given to you is based on you being what's called a full-time student. At Eastern, that's defined as 12 credits or more. So typically it's about 3 classes. I know with the structure of fall likely being in the online model, but being in the maximum flexibility position, some students are considering what options they have for registration and possibly not taking 12 credits. Just please be aware, if you take fewer than 12 credits, you can still receive your financial aid, but it will be adjusted based on the number of credits that you're taking. So if you take fewer credits, you will receive less financial aid. Again, that is acceptable, that's totally workable, but you need to let us know so that we can make those adjustments and still allow you to receive your financial aid on time. You may see holds come on your account from financial aid, from student financial services, from registration, from advising. There are lots of places across campus that might hold things up for you if we have questions for you or need additional information or need you to take action. So be sure that you're watching for those holds and they don't catch you off guard. I can't stress it enough. Set up direct deposit. Be sure that you're successfully completing those credits that you're taking. That's ties back to what I talked about earlier about the terms and conditions that you're responsible for as being a financial aid recipient. Part of that is the expectation that you're going to successfully complete those credits that you're taking. Be sure that you know when due dates are and that you're paying charges on time. No one likes late fees. No one wants to get them. So it's important to be aware of when things happen and when things are due. And if student employment is something that you're interested in, make sure you're applying for several jobs until you get hired. Don't just apply for one and hope and wait and find out weeks later you didn't get that opportunity before you move on to the next application. Apply for a whole bunch at once so you leave your options open if student employment is important to you. Last few couple of pieces of information. Many of our offices are available online anytime through inside.ew.edu. This will be another portal web resource that you will use regularly as a student here at Eastern. So something to get familiar with now if you haven't already. It will give you connections to all the offices that you see listed here, along with a lot of other campus services. If you haven't already, be sure that you complete the Canvas course invitation, the new student orientation that should have been sent to you by this point. There's lots of helpful information about all kinds of campus services, from getting yourself registered to financial aid and billing, all the way through to student activities and housing and lots of the other great things that we have here at Eastern. So if you haven't started that course yet, be sure that you get going on it. It's going to give you a lot of great information, including a section that's dedicated to financial aid, billing, and student employment. I've also listed here contact information for the 3 offices that I covered today. But if you can't write fast enough to write this information down, you can also find it at the inside.ew.edu link. So that, actually, sorry, I have a couple of other points. I know one of the common questions that's coming up with our admission staff in our office as well right now is housing and trying to decide what to do. There was a great webinar last week from our housing office to give you more information and go through the specifics of what is going to be available in the fall. We definitely have housing options available to you, and they are going to be super flexible with you as well, just like our studies will be. So it will be a great option for many students. But maybe you don't know right now. Maybe you need a little time to decide. When it comes to your financial aid is based on your housing choice. Many of you, when you completed your financial aid application, indicated that you were going to live in the residence halls. And if that changes, it will change your financial aid offer because the cost is different living on campus versus some of the other choices. So something to be aware of. We will be proactively reaching out to those students who indicated that they had intended to live in the residence halls a little later this summer, probably sometime in July, just to check in and see what your final decision is, whether you're going to stay on campus, whether you're going to move somewhere off campus, or whether you're going to stay at home and study. So more information on that, but the important thing to be aware of is that you will see a change in your financial aid award if you choose other housing options. It's totally okay, just something to be aware of. I think that covers it for the bulk of the items that I wanted to cover today. It looks like we have a couple of questions here. I'll see if I can address. What do you need to do if you haven't received a financial aid offer? As I mentioned, most students should have received a financial aid notification by this point. If you did your financial aid application longer than 2 weeks ago, if you haven't received a notification, the best thing to do is contact us. Let's check on it. Let's see what's going on and see if we can get you on the right path.
For sure. Appreciate it, Candy. So like we already started, we're going to go ahead and jump into the Q&A section. So if you do have questions specifically for us, now is the best time. Like Vanessa, appreciate the question. We're able to get that. So we're just going to go ahead and move right into that. Also, we tossed a couple of the links to the contact information for that we just displayed in the chat. So if you were interested in checking that out, you can access that there as well. So next question is from, looks like an Isabel Sanchez. Curious about the potential of like a financial aid card to receive funds. Can you reiterate how the funds are going to get allocated?
So some institutions, when students have leftover financial aid, they produce like a credit card that's money that you can use to pay for whatever other expenses that you may have. That's not how we do it here at Eastern. We turn those funds over to you to do with them as you need. So again, you will see that that leftover funding, either a direct deposit into your bank account if you've set up direct deposit, or a physical check is created and mailed out to you to deposit, do your own deposit with your bank.
Appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate the question. And then it looks like students are still a little curious. Looks like Jensen has a question on when the best time to go about applying for those fall jobs for the quarter.
Okay, so the bulk of fall jobs are going to post in September. Some will start to show up as early as August. My recommendation would be to start looking in mid to late August to see what information is out there, but it's going to become far more prevalent as we progress into September. So mid-September-ish, even into the start of the quarter, the first few weeks of the quarter, there's lots of employers across campus that will be posting job opportunities. So just keep watch of that information. A follow-up question to that was, if you weren't offered work study on your financial aid form, how do we add that in? So again, because work study is such a limited fund, it's limited to very specific populations of students that can qualify. If you didn't receive a form to allow you to apply for work study consideration, it means that you don't meet the eligibility criteria for that award, and it's not something that you can apply for at this time. But as I mentioned multiple times, there are lots and lots of job opportunities for you across campus that are just as beneficial and viable as a work study job. So I would encourage you to seek other student employment office options using that handshake tool to meet your employment needs.
Appreciate it. So it looks like Joshua has a question about like housing. If you were to change your housing, how will that go about changing your award, and how should students go about letting us know?
So if you know for sure now what your housing plans are going to be, you can let us know now, and we will update your information accordingly. If you choose to live at home with your parents, your cost is significantly less than living here in the residence halls, and we're by law required to recalculate your financial aid based on that change. In most cases, it's going to reduce potentially your loans, but it can have other effects as well. I can't specifically answer that until we make the adjustments according to what options you choose. Again, if you know for sure what your plans are, you could let us know now, or we will be proactively reaching out to students that had initially said they were going to live on campus. We'll be proactively reaching out to those students by late July to try and firm up what your housing plans are.
Appreciate it. And if they've made that decision, say say they just made that decision right now, how should students go about contacting you?
The best thing to do is to give us a call, and we can walk through that process with you. We are available by email as well, but depending on the volume of email, sometimes it can take us a day or two to get back, and students can sometimes be more anxious and want an answer faster. So if you want quick help, by phone is the best way to reach us.
And always best practices with that, guys. I mean, if you call us early in the morning or closer to the closing time, you're going to have a better chance of getting a hold of somebody, opposed to if you call during, like, I don't know, lunch break or something like that, right? It's going to be a lot more people on there. So understand that, best practices with that, it's going to be some shorter holding times as well. Yeah, appreciate the question, Josh. Let's see. Where is it? Oh yeah, so looks like Weston has a question, curious about like the deadline for choosing loans and how that would work.
There isn't a deadline, but it will take at least 2 weeks to get that loan set up on your behalf from the time that you tell us that you want those funds. And depending on the volume, so as we get closer to the start of the fall quarter, our volume from students asking for extra help will increase significantly, which adds more time to us being able to take care of business for you. So if my caution would be, you can wait and decide however long you choose, but I would give yourself at least 2 to 4 weeks before you actually need that financial help for us to get it set up for you.
Appreciate it. Let's see what other questions we got. So it looks like, oh, go ahead.
So I can just see that there's a student that asked, if I applied for work study, does that affect my financial aid? So work study is part of your financial aid offer. What it's likely going to change if you're at the limit of total financial aid funds you can get for the school year and subsequently are offered a work study award, it's probably going to change your student loan picture, which is a good thing. Less student loan debt and you'll be working for those funds instead. An important caution with work study is that is money that you earn as you work. So you get a paycheck twice a month. It's not money that you, so for example, if you're eligible for $1,000 a quarter, it's $1,000 that you will earn over the course of the quarter. It's not money that you will get on the first day of classes like you do with your grant and loan funds.
Appreciate it. Just reading the questions as they come in here. So Matthew Russo has a question about the the students that are receiving loans without like their parents. Can you talk about how that works and how that is offered to students? Because it looks like there's a little bit of confusion on what that's based on, right? Like, is that based on my income, credit, those types of things? Can you talk about how, you know, that's offered to students?
Sure. Let me give a quick snapshot of student loans, the whole picture, so it makes a little more sense. Sorry, I talk with my hands and get in my face here. The first opportunities that are going to be offered to you are ones that are the best options, lowest interest rates, guaranteed, things of that nature. As a first-time freshman, the most that you're going to be eligible for is $5,500 in student loan. If you need more funding beyond that, the next automatic offer step is to offer funds to your parents on your behalf. If your parents are, those types of loans, they're called a Parent Plus loan, and they are credit based. So it means that the federal government will look at your parents' credit scores to determine whether or not they qualify. If for any reason they don't qualify for that parent loan, then up to $4,000 additional funds may be offered to you where you're the borrower in place of the money that was offered to your parent. The flip side of that is, say your parents do qualify for a parent loan, but they're not interested in borrowing a loan on your behalf. I think what Matthew, sorry, had to look and see who that was. What Matthew was referring to were private loans or alternative loans. We use that verbiage interchangeably. That means where you're going to a bank, as an example, to borrow a loan. It will also be what's called credit based. So they're going to look at your credit score to see if you qualify for that type of loan assistance. In most cases, first-time freshmen do not have a credit history or have very little credit history, and therefore on their own, they don't qualify for that loan assistance. They usually need to get someone to what's called co-sign, someone to back that loan for them, that if the student can't pay it, that person is responsible to pay it. Often students have their parents as co-signers, but on the front end, it's the student and their credit that's impacted by that loan. Does that help answer that question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's so much that goes into student loans, so I really appreciate that. I'm sure that a lot of students, you know, got their specific questions answered with all of that, right? It looks like Matthew has a follow up asking, you know, would that turn into like 4,000 per quarter or year? You want to reiterate on that one again?
Sure. So I think what you're talking about is if your parents are not eligible to borrow a loan, that 4,000 offer that would come to you in its place is for the school year. So you would receive 1/3 of that total at the start of each term.
Appreciate it.
So I can answer, Isabel had a question
Yeah.
about if she's not offered work. When would she know if she's offered work study? So the work study application form, I believe that those that were sent to is due by July 1, and we will make those decisions in July with communication to students by early August if they qualify for work study or not. So it's something that happens a little later in the summer, still allowing you time to pursue other means of student employment if work study isn't the option that's available to you. But again, I can't emphasize enough, work study is such a small piece of our student employment options on campus. You'll have lots and lots of other opportunities even if you don't qualify for work study.
Cool. Appreciate it. And it looks like Matthew has another follow-up from last time. Was curious how that could potentially change for a student that's coming in as like a transferring junior opposed to like an incoming freshman.
When you completed your financial aid application, if you had to provide parent information, that means you are what's called a dependent student, and your parents are a factor in your eligibility. So the process would work the same way. What could be different as a transfer student, maybe you do have more of a credit history and potentially could qualify for private loans on your own without a cosigner. If private loans is a path that you think you might need to pursue, what I always encourage students to do is first check with the banks that you work with. So your credit union or whatever financial institution you bank with, talk to them about educational loans and what options they have available. The smart thing to be aware of when it comes to private loans is that they are competitive. So sometimes you have to shop around and make sure you're getting the best interest rate, the best repayment terms, if there's any kinds of forgiveness options. So it's something to be sure that you're investigating a little bit before you choose a lender to try and borrow a private loan from.
Right. And then it's also important to remember, I don't know if we have any students from this like population here in this webinar, but if you are a previous Running Start student, you are still an incoming freshman. That doesn't make you an incoming transfer student. And so that is important to remember as well, that that beginning fall that you're, like I said, incoming freshman. And so all of those same rules are going to be applying to you, even though your credits are, going to be reflecting that work that you put in already. So I know that we get a lot of questions about that.
Mm-hmm.
So Annie, honestly, I've been looking at this question, trying to figure out how to answer it. And I think I've got a good idea on it now. The question in general is, if things are changing in terms of like my aid in college, whether that be from like working in the summer, whether it be from like a parent, but if things are changing and due to like the COVID-19 situation, is there any way for students to go about getting more financial aid help because of that?
So it's a multi-part answer to that question. I think Annie's question was her intent was to work this summer to raise money for college. Your financial aid award is based on your and your family's income as it was in 2018. So potentially it's 2 years outdated, and certainly with everything that's happening around COVID-19, it can be very different for families. Your intent to have a job won't impact what your eligibility is for financial aid for this school year. That said, had you been working in 2018 and you're not working now, or if the income situation has changed for your parents, their jobs have changed, they've reduced hours, they've maybe been laid off altogether during the current situation, those are considerations that we can look at. We will start to make that it's called professional judgment, and there is a bit of an extensive process that you have to go through. It's a unique exception that schools are allowed to do, but it requires a lot of supporting information to back up those decisions. So we make that information, we start allowing that process to happen on July 1 because we want to have a picture of your year to date, and that gives us 6 months of information to try and make an informed decision around. So if your situation involves your parents' income changing as well, it is something that we can look at, but it won't be until early July that we start that process.
Appreciate it. And then same person, question from Annie, was curious how are jobs taxed the same way if you're working on campus as they are elsewhere?
So a little bit different twist on that. She's asking about if I have work study versus if I have general student employment. I think is what her intent was.
Oh, I apologize. I misread that.
Well, I'm using my background and experience to interpret what she said. I think she said it a little bit differently. So
Got you.
work study is a grant. It does fall under all of the taxation rules, like any job that you have anywhere, any part-time job that you have anywhere. So it doesn't matter if it's work study or if it's campus employment. The difference will be when you complete your financial aid form and you list income that you earned in 2020 and next year in 2021. While you will report your work study as income, you'll also report it as an exclusion, so it won't count against you in the financial aid world versus other part-time employment will. That said, most students aren't making a significant amount of money, even with traditional part-time employment, so it's probably not going to harm you when it comes to your financial aid application, regardless if it's a work study or just a general campus or off-campus job.
Cool, appreciate it. So just to reiterate, so we are looking to get out of here at about 3 o'clock. Looks like we've only got a couple questions left. So if we do get some more questions, we'll be reaching out to those students. So if you've got more questions, definitely send it to us. We're definitely going to be able to get you that info. But yeah, for right now, we'll just get to these last two questions. So do you want to go with Sean's or Royden's questions first?
I'll do Royden's real quick. So
Cool.
if you completed the Eastern Scholarship application, the opportunities available to freshmen, those notifications have been sent already. At this point, it would be if the student declines that award or doesn't show up in the fall, our next round of awards will be in October after classes have started, once we know what kind of, where we stand, if students came or not. The last one is, where do you get the work study application form? If you are eligible to apply for work study, it would have been part of your financial aid notification, and that form would be available in your unsatisfied requirement section in your financial aid portal.
Cool, appreciate it. Oh, we got one more just came in. Looks like Annie again is curious. When is the deadline to turn in like out of school scholarships? So turn in those private scholarships.
Yeah, private scholarship applications, those deadlines vary greatly. Most of them are by early to mid-May at the latest. So at this point, most scholarship deadlines will have passed for funds for the 2020-21 school year. Your next opportunity will be starting to look in December and January for next school year.
Cool. And if they have received those funds, say from like a local scholarship, when should they need to get those to us by?
Most of the donors are aware. They send those in the summer.
Awesome. Cool. Appreciate everybody for taking the time out of your day. It looks like we are out of queue questions for this webinar. So appreciate you taking the time, Candy. Appreciate you coming out and giving us that really detailed presentation. I learned a lot on that. I'm sure the students that were here today learned a lot too. So everybody that was here, really appreciate you. With that, we're gonna get out of here. Did you have anything that you wanted to say before we get out of here, Candy?
No, thanks everyone, and go Eags.
Yeah, go Eags. Have a great day, everybody. Happy weekend.